Welcome to Project Inspire, a student-led podcast created and produced by students in the Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and sponsored by Haslam's Office of Student Engagement. Grab a notepad, take some notes, and get ready to be inspired by Haslam's brightest community members in this episode of Project Inspire. Hey there, welcome to Project Inspire. I'm Neel Patel, and I'm here with Aaron Snyder. Aaron, how's it going today?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Neel.
It's going fantastic for me too. Would you like to tell us in Project Inspire who you are a bit?
Sure. My name's Aaron Snyder. I graduated from Farragut in 1983 and then immediately went into the University of Tennessee and graduated in 87. And I've had the privilege of coming back here probably for about the last 15 years. When I was working in the corporate world, coming back and doing the executive in residence program, and so I'm actually one of the original ones. And so I started doing that, and over the last next 12 years, I kept coming back year after year for 1 week, and I'd start working with students and working with second-year master's students, and then working with seniors, and then working with sophomores and freshmen, and really enjoyed my time here. And eventually the dean's like, hey, when are you going to retire? Would you consider coming to work here? And at first I said, it's not really on my bingo card, but he came to me and says there's a need. And so the need is to leverage my network and relationships to help the students find amazing careers and roles. So it's actually been the best role I've ever had in my entire life. And I've had some amazing roles in my life, so I'm living the perfect dream here.
Well, that sounds great. Speaking of UT in high regards. Well, I guess kind of based off that, when you were applying for schools, what made UT specifically stand out to you? And what makes you think Haslam stand out after you graduated?
So when I graduated in Farragut in 1983, it was just obvious. Most people just, at that time, honestly just went into the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. It is not the same academic standards as it was, and I'm not saying that it was bad, but you have to understand this year, I just saw the statistics that the incoming freshmen have a GPA average of 4.21. That was not the case when I was coming to school here. And probably several of my alumni would also agree as we share those statistics with people. But for me, the University of Tennessee Knoxville has such an amazing brand that's world-renowned. People know our brand. We have a very strong athletic department across all channels. And so when I'm talking to people outside of Knoxville, which is really what my role really entails, people know University of Tennessee. And when you look at the statistics that, we have students from 47 states coming into UT Knoxville, we have a very strong brand. So a lot of my students now are coming from New York, Chicago, California, Texas, Colorado, you name it. They're coming from all over. And so we're really a national school now, and we continue to climb in the ranks. So that's what sets us apart. The faculty here is absolutely outstanding.
Of course. Yeah, speaking of faculty, and I know what you mean, this being such a nice school, like coming from Oklahoma, from Chicago myself, I've been seeing the benefits and reaping it from UT. So out of all your friends and professors, what connection at UT do you think was most meaningful for you? And how do you suggest other students like myself find that connection?
So when I was a student, I really didn't have a whole lot of connections. I was very focused on work, very focused on just getting through school. I worked myself through school 100%. So I wasn't engaged as much as I could have, and I could have made my life a lot easier had I done that. So my recommendation is get engaged early with faculty, get engaged early with staff. They're here to help. This is what they want to do. They get up every single day, and I watch them year after year get up every single day and come back and be inspired in the classroom. And you can see it with the results of the product that we're putting out, which are the students. And so for me, it's just get engaged early. Find a mentor or two that can help you grow and develop. And I'd find a mentor who's in an area that's not your strength, because that's how you're going to strengthen those skills.
Of course. So yeah, just getting out there, getting more engaged. So we know you work incredibly hard at what you do. How can other students develop that same work ethic that you have and put that energy in places they want to get better at?
Well, I'm not sure ambition is something that you can just say, I want to have and have it. Either you have it or you don't. But I will tell you this. If you are in Haslam, you have a high degree of ambition, because it is so competitive to get in here. I cannot tell you how many times I have to get a phone call from somebody who's a colleague or a friend whose child wanted to get in and they couldn't get in. So respect the process of how hard it is to get in here. And so my best advice is when you're an incoming freshman, set the bar early, because this bar is going to dictate your success in Haslam, and it's going to dictate very easily. This past year, I was walking through, coming from the Cumberland house where I stay when I'm here on campus, and I was coming on the very first day of school, and it was roughly about 7 o'clock or so. And I remember walking by Ayers and seeing the clock, and I thought at that exact moment, every single student that is accepted to the University of Tennessee is on equal level playing field right now.
Of course.
And an hour and a half later, they're not. Because somebody slept in, somebody didn't go to class, somebody didn't take it serious, somebody dropped a class. And so the competitiveness starts once you get here. But the best advice I can give is realize and recognize how hard it is to get into this university. It's not easy. And I'm sure there are many students out there who have peers who went to their high school who they felt could get in here and they didn't. And we wish we could take them all, but we cannot. And so as we continue to raise the academic bar, appreciate the fact that you worked so hard to get in here and do not squander that opportunity when you walk through the door.
Of course. Well, that's great advice. And just kind of following up with that, I personally would love to know as well, a lot of students such as myself will come into Haslam. They don't understand how it works. They don't understand like studying is completely different from, high school, and then they fall down a little bit. How do they get back up on their feet and, I guess, lack of better words, start building on their career at an early age without feeling like they're too behind,
No, Neil, that's a good point. I mean, I make no bones about it. I wasn't exactly on the Honor Society or a GLS student, et cetera. So hustle has a sometimes ability to put equality on the playing field. That said, it's very easy to fall behind very quickly because sometimes nobody really teaches you how to play the game of college. And it's not just Tennessee, it's Penn, it's Georgia, it's Oregon. I've taught there, I've taught at UCLA. It's the same thing. And so the thing I always talk to students when they come in is that this is college, and in 4 years you're going to be in the real world and you're going to be expected to have certain level of standards, and you need to start those standards now with yourself, and that's accountability, being actionable, and following through on what you say you're going to do, and that means commitments of I'm going to study for this test, I'm going to study for this test. You can get behind a little bit, and I will tell you, sometimes the students I'm most impressed with, and I know this is going to sound incredibly interesting because I do work with a lot of GLS students, I do work with the fellows, I do work with the IBEP students, is sometimes I'll get a student who has like a 3.98 GPA, right? and then I'll ask them, and when I ask them that question, they're wincing away, like, oh, I got a 3.98. I'm like, lean into it. It's a great story, And the story is this: the story is, yes, you may have gotten a B in one class, but the very next semester you came back and you got a 4.0, and then another 4.0, and another 4.0. And what I tell the execs that I'm talking to that are looking at talent to coming to UT is you want that Tennessee hustle. Because these students are the ones you really want, because they knew that mathematically it was impossible for them to get a 4.0, but they got out of bed the next day and they came back and they got a 4.0 and a 4.0 and a 4.0. So if you show up and let's say you didn't manage your time right, find a way to manage your time better. Get a mentor, get a buddy, get a peer group, get a study group, commit to it, lock into it. But it's okay. It's not the end of the world if you get your first B. You're competing at a whole different level now, so you're not always going to be the smartest person in the room. You're not the smartest person in the room in the real world. I'm never the smartest person in the room, ever, when I walk into a business meeting. But I do surround myself with incredibly brilliant people who are subject matter experts in their own field, who give me advice on what we need to do. So if you get a little bit behind, get back up. And now's the perfect time. We're just getting ready to hit through midterms, and people are not going to do as well as they thought. And so get a tutor, get back on it, and don't start sliding down the hill, because it is going to be unbelievably competitive at the last quarter mile of this race when you hit your senior year, and you're going to be looking for opportunities, and the market is going to dictate what level of talent they want.
Of course. Well, that really resonates with me, surrounding myself with people that I know are going to push me academically, professionally, and whatnot. And that GPA story hits a little hard, so gets personal on that matter. Well, honestly, I just want to ask, were there any other...
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So people ask me all the time, how important are the grades? I mean, I have hired hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've built amazing high-performing organizations over my 20-something year career, 28. I've never hired anybody with a 4.0. And it's not that I don't want to hire them with a 4.0. I'm okay not hiring somebody that's a 4.0. So just because you don't have a 4.0 doesn't mean a certain thing. So as long as you just continue to improve, I would rather see that than anything else.
Yeah, just building up upon that. Well, were there any other resources at UT that really stood out to you and propelled your career, or at least made you realize, all right, this is the path I want to choose in life?
I wish I could answer and say yes, but
Yeah.
I didn't have them in the late 80s. I
Got
didn't.
you.
And so when I graduated, I had one job opportunity, and it was selling cigarettes. So not an option.
All right.
So I literally packed up, went back to California, and I started my career, and I started my family. And so as I continued to work my way and got into finance and worked at American Express and ran the Western U.S. for them, and then was recruited by Blackhawk and ran the North America, and then I worked at Experian and worked on North America. All of those things helped me continue to grow and build, but the one thing I learned very early on is get a mentor. And so I've had the privilege of having some amazing mentors in my life. I've had Jim Donald, who was the former president of Starbucks and CEO. He was a mentor when I was just some young guy at American Express, and he took an interest in me. And we had a passion for the philanthropy that was up in Seattle. And I sat on the board of directors for Ryther, and we became good friends. And Michael Casey, the CFO, similar story. You can find mentors if you truly put yourself out there and are open to saying, I don't know everything, and it'd be great to have a mentor. You can get some amazing mentors. And these mentors have guided me through my life, whether it's jumping from American Express over to Blackhawk, or going from Blackhawk to Experian. But not one single mentor did I have in my peer group say that coming to the University of Tennessee was a bad idea. In fact, every single one of them said, I wish I could do that. And I'm actually working with 4 execs right now of Fortune 100 companies who want to do what I'm doing at their alma maters when they're ready. So I'm actually showing them how to do it.
Well, that sounds great. Well, you kind of just helped me transition, because now we're going to go into the career questions.
Sure.
So honestly, the first one, becoming the first executive director of strategic partnerships for Haslam, what have you loved most about your role?
The people. I can tell you this, and this is the first role I've ever had that is purpose-driven. And I've never had purpose-driven. And there have been things in my life that have happened that have shaped me to become from corporate guy crawling up a ladder, climbing up a ladder, changing jobs for career growth, et cetera, to where I'm now so content in my heart of what I'm doing that this is what I get up and do every single day and have a passion for. I will tell you, my very first day, so my 2-year anniversary is coming up on October 31st here. I remember leaving here my very first day of work, and I called my wife, her name's Eva, and I was calling her as I was walking back to the car, and I'm just talking to her, and she goes, stop, stop, stop. And I'm like, what? And she goes, I've gotten this exact phone call 4 times in our marriage. The first day you worked at American Express, the first day you worked at Blackhawk, the first day you worked at Experian, and the first day you worked here. She goes, this is the most excited you've ever been.
You've got everything.
And it's not money driven, it is purpose driven. And so for me, I love working with the faculty. I love working with the staff. I love working with the students. So it's the perfect trifecta. And then pulling in the business elements to help them connect the dots, because the companies out there are looking for phenomenal talent. We're building phenomenal talent. My job is just to put the data points together. It's as simple as that. It's not a hard mix.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next question, and I know you'll really like this since you're really good at it. What steps have you been taking to help students like me, like everybody else, get connected with high-level professionals? Is there like a trick to the trade, or just walk us through that?
There's a process.
Okay.
The first process is I will do an intake call with every single student that reaches out. And I would also encourage them to do it at the Career Center, because they do this incredibly well as well. And I can't do every single student. The reality of it is, do an intake call, do a resume review. Resumes here are spectacular. I mean, we do a great job of getting the students on paper. So that's working beautifully. We bring in the best talent from high schools across the country. We're doing that fantastic. We're fantastic at that. We educate them, they're prepared, they're Haslam prepared, they're ready to go out. It's just connecting the data points is the only challenge that we have. And so that's what my remit is. That's what I'm solving for, and that's how I'm trying to make it more of an automated process. But right now it's manual, but it's really about an intake call. And then I'll talk to you about your resume, and then I'll immediately look at your LinkedIn, because your LinkedIn, in my opinion, is 10 times more valuable than your resume, because it's the easiest thing for somebody. If I say, hey, I know Neel Patel, sharp guy, you really ought to take a look at him. They're not going to pull your resume. They're not going to go into their Talio database. They're going to go on LinkedIn and go, boop, hey, this looks great. So the first thing I'll tell students is just be prepared. I'm very direct. Now, I do it in a very caring, loving way, but if your picture looks like you were just asking somebody to the Sadie Hawkins dance, I'll tell you. And so I've had a lot of people redo their pictures. I will help them write their script of about. Don't start with, I am a sophomore at the University of Tennessee. It'll be, give me something dynamic that talks about your Clifton strengths. What are things that you bring to the table that nobody else can bring to the table? And start setting the table. Once I have the resume, once I have the LinkedIn, once I have the other intake, which is where do you want to work? What do you want to do? What are your passions? Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? What's your culture index? Because every company is different. And so when you get to be a junior and you start looking for companies to mesh with, you're only looking for skills because that's what the current process has taught us to do. But it doesn't take into consideration culture. And the best example I can give is if you want to get into aeronautical engineering and you want to go work for an airline, there's a big difference of working for American, Delta, and Southwest. All three are fantastic companies, but all three have a culture index. So I'll spend time understanding what is your culture index, what are your hardwired, what makes you drive, where are you going to thrive, where are you going to be most successful, and then I will come up with a game plan of showing you and teaching you how to make connections at these companies. And the first thing you do is you make connections before you need them.
Helping individuals, helping students. Aside from that, on the other side of the spectrum, we're going to say you help so many companies that were underperforming to succeed. So what would you say was the thing that motivates you to continue good work even when the results are bad in the present?
Oh, I thrive on that. That's my Super Bowl, dude.
That's what he is.
I mean, if things are going well, you don't want to call me because I'm just going to go in and mess it up. I'm ADHD on a whole different level, and that energy level just won't slow down. But where my specialty is, and I learned it very early, is I can take things that need a solution and architect a solution. And I'm not an engineer, nor am I an engineer by trade. But I can look at something and say, okay, this is broken, but it's very easily fixable, but here's how you have to do it. And normally you have to make a couple of tweaks. The first thing and foremost is always comes down to people first. I was a horrible manager. When my first people leading role I was given, it was bad. So bad that my mentor at the time, Greg Hood, who I just absolutely think the world of, pulled me in and says, you're a really bad manager, and I've had a lot. And I'm like, all right, how do I get better? And he says, start leading. And there's a difference between managing and leading. And so what I've been able to do with all of these transformation projects is take a step back and look at it through the lens of the people. People don't wake up every single day going, I want to be meh. I want to be okay. I want to be bad. And you have to understand that 66% of Americans really don't love what they do for their jobs. So if I can find the right people in the right seat in the right role and give them the authority to make decisions, and rather than coming to me for every single thing, I have a saying: I don't need a doctor. I mean, I don't need a reporter. I need a doctor, right? Don't come to me and tell me that there's a problem. Come and tell me and say, hey, there's a problem. Here's how I intend to fix it. And so by putting people first is the easiest way to do it. So it really is not that hard. It looks hard. And companies will pay you a lot of money to come in and fix things that are broken because they get really, really frustrated. So you know, there's a good life there if you can get it.
Well, yeah, you kind of already went into this, so I'm going to tweak this question up a bit and just kind of ask you on that. Within the underperforming companies, was there like one, I guess, general issue you kind of saw arising in them that you could? Oh yeah.
100%, always. Poor leadership.
There you
Poor
go.
management. Nobody wants to be managed. Nobody wakes up and say, I want a really good manager today. I want somebody to tell me all the bad things I'm doing and sit behind a desk and not roll up their sleeves and show me how to do it. I learned very early from my mentors, who were the absolute most amazing. And I'll give you a real life story. The first time I saw this, I was with Jim Donald, who was the president and CEO of Starbucks. And there was a fundraiser we were doing in Seattle. And we did our business meeting in Seattle, and then we had to go over to the fundraiser. And I was one of the guest speakers. And so he goes, hey, do you want to ride? And I'm like, sure. So I jumped in the car with him. And we just rode all the way from Starbucks, probably about 10 blocks to the Fairmont. And he goes, oh, wait, stop. And he stopped, and he went back and got his car, pulled a box out of his car. And he comes back, and here is the president and CEO of Starbucks. And he gets out, and he pulls into valet, and he goes, hey, Charles, and it's the valet. And he goes to his trunk, and he pulls out a tomato plant. And he goes, hey, I told you I was going to give you one of my seedlings. Here's one of my seedlings. I mean, here you have one of the most powerful people who plays tennis with the president of Nigeria, cutting a deal. And yet he knows the valet, and he knows they've had conversations about planting tomatoes, and he made that person feel like they're the most important valet in the world. And I learned that on watching him when nobody else watches. And then I watched him when we landed. We went to New York the very next day. I needed a ride because I worked at Amex, and so I rode on the Starbucks jet. And as we landed, we landed at Teterboro, and he goes, "Hey, Snyder, do you want a cup of coffee?" Now, I'm in the back of the van because I'm the only non-Starbucks guy. So I'm like, "Sure." And so we pull up to a Starbucks, and it was Midtown. And he goes over, and he pulls his badge, and it was right after, it was right around Thanksgiving, I remember that, but they were turning the store red. And what that means is Starbucks goes from fall to Christmas, like overnight. You walk in and everything's red. And all he did was he pulled his badge and he pushed it up. Now there are like, I don't know, 180 Starbucks in Manhattan. He pulls into a random one, shows the badge, and the person coming out is like, hey, how you doing, Jim? And they knew him.
Wow.
And he knew them. And he rolls up his sleeves and he goes, you need some help for about 20 minutes? And he helps turn the store red. Didn't think anything about it.
Wow.
They let me put the pastries on one plate to the other only because I wasn't a Starbucks employee, so I'm official, I've done it. But my point is, at that point I realized he connects with people at the most basic level, because at the end of the day, if I can get a student comfortable talking to me, then there's no reason why they can't go in and nail an interview and talk to a hiring recruiter at ABC company, et cetera. So it's really about people and just making connections.
Are you still in touch with the Starbucks CEO?
Actually, he's running a grocery store chain now. So
oh, wow. What grocery store?
I can't say.
Oh.
You can Google
We'll keep it down, yeah. Perfect. Well, honestly, talking about careers and whatnot, talking about companies, what was one thing you're most proud of in your time working at American Express?
I think the thing I'm most proud of at American Express was the team I assembled. They have a thing at American Express called employee engagement scores, or they used to be called employee satisfaction scores. ESAT was what they were called. And so if you look at my bio, you're going to very quickly see I went from selling Post-it notes, office supplies, and paper clips at Office Depot to working at American Express. And it's like, how in the world would anybody ever go? It's not like Amex said, we need somebody that has paperclip expertise. You know, it was like, hey, we need this. And what happened is an exec at American Express was talking to my former boss at Office Depot, and my former boss at Office Depot knew I'd outgrown my role. And so the two of them had talked, and so American Express reached out and said, hey, we have this role. Now, I didn't know any of this happened until after the fact. So I'm thinking they wanted me for my financial expertise. That wasn't the case. They needed somebody because they had a team that had the lowest performing employee satisfaction scores in the globe. I mean, you had people in Eastern Europe that had happier people than people in the Western U.S. And so within a year, we went from worst to best. And it's because I took care of an HR issue where I had a very poor performing leader. But more importantly, I found the good in people of what everybody could bring to the table. And so they started working as a team. So there's a lot of skills if you can get teams to work well together.
And that's just your leadership skill showing rather than
I don't know about that, but it's I hired great people. I hired great people, and they knew how to work together. And again, I subscribe to the school of thought, which is leadership is much better than management. And so people come to me and they say, what do I do? It's like, here's what I intend to do. Here's what I want to do. What are your thoughts? Put some holes in it, and we'll bounce the ideas around. But at the end of the day, I'm holding them accountable for their decision.
Yeah. So I know you have so much experience. When working
Not that old.
Didn't say that. Working in Haslam, then getting an offer to become the CRO of Card Market. How do you balance those two like major commitments, I'd say?
So actually, it's not that much of a major commitment. It's so I'm working at Haslam, and I just want to be super transparent about this. Love what I do, and it's awesome. My energy level is off the chart. So I'm used to working about 65 hours a week is my norm. And if I ever did slow down, it probably wouldn't be good for my health, to be honest with you. I've had many people tell me that. It's just how I'm hardwired, and that's okay. And just like I appreciate people that want 40 hours, and that's it. I respect that. So Card Market, private equity came to me and said, hey, we have this card company. We know you have background. Would you be interested in working here and doing some work? And I said no, and I kept saying no, and I said no for like 2 months. And I said, but I know people, because I came from Blackhawk, and so I kept giving them people, and they kept coming back and back and back, and finally they said, you know, hey, keep in mind, I live in a very small town called Nolensville, which is 23 minutes south of Nashville. I think we're getting our own first Publix, so it's big news.
Great news.
Well, hey, we're great athletes, so we seem to do well every year in athletics. But they came to me and said, we just need somebody that can help us with a strategy.
Of course.
And I said, I can commit to you a very small fractional piece, but I'm not going to do it unless I talk to Tennessee. So I did. I came back and I talked to the university, and I just said, you know, I've been approached. And I said, and the odds that it happens to be in my backyard, 6 minutes from my house, is kind of interesting. And it's almost like maybe it's a sign from God. I need to take a look at it. And I was 100% prepared if they just said, nope. I'd be like, okay, bye. Because I gave my commitment to myself, to my family, to the university, and most importantly to God, that this is what I was going to do in my last chapter of my career. Last chapters of my career would be focused on purpose at University of Tennessee. So the dean's like, go ahead, just balance, keep your job done. And he said most people do a lot of LLC work on the side, and I'm like, nobody told me that, but okay. So the good news, because I've had to learn a lot about academia. And so I put a small amount of my time with Card Market. And the thing that I did was, though, I just didn't feel right about it. So my wife and I prayed on it. We talked about it, and I came back. And so basically, half of all the equity that it's ever made at Card Market is going to be automatically flipped over to endowments I've signed up for a major endowment here at the university that it's all going to go there. So I'm basically working for UT over there and bringing money for students. So
it all works out.
It all works out. And so when the equity hits, it's basically going to be for UT students that probably haven't even been born yet. So what greater purpose is that? So I make it work in balance.
Of course. Well, I think that's a solid stop for career questions. And now we can get into the relatable, the juicy questions about life.
Uh-oh.
So
I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Okay. So a while back, we had briefly talked about your story about the flight and whatnot, and you missing it. Could you share that story again, how it greatly impacted your life?
It did. So it was September 10th, 2001. I was working at American Express, and I was in LA, and I was at a golf tournament. I was supposed to be on a flight from from Ontario Airport, which is outside of LA, to JFK, and it was supposed to be landing, and I had a meeting on September 11th at 8:45 at the donut shop at the bottom of Tower 1. So I would stay at the Millennium Hilton and walk across. And I had about 8 colleagues of mine from Amex who were going to meet me, because we would meet at 8:45. We'd grab a Danish and a cup of coffee and just chit-chat for 15 minutes, and then we'd walk over to the tower and show up about 9:15, 9:30. Don't get too impressed because you work till 8 o'clock at night. But my point is I got stuck in traffic, and when I finished the golf tournament, it was late. I was sitting on the 10 freeway, and I'll be honest, I was the guy crawling up the ladder. I was the guy looking for my next gig. I was the guy looking for options. I was the guy looking for money. I was very money driven, and wanted all the nice things in life because I'm first gen. I never really had it, and so I was very economically focused. Is probably a polite way of saying something I wasn't really proud of. And so as I sat there, and it was called a SIG alert when the traffic comes to a dead stop. And I remember getting on my BlackBerry, you're gonna have to Google that, BlackBerry, and it's like texting in the old days. And it's like, I'm trying to text my wife like, hey, I'm not gonna make it, can you grab my bag, meet me halfway, and I'll grab it. Well, she went shopping and left her phone, and so I couldn't reach her. And so I was mad. I was like, I'm surprised God didn't just strike me down with a big, because it was not my best look.
Yeah.
And here I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss this very important meeting, and And I was very upset, and I get home and I'm mad, and I'm telling my wife, I can't believe you didn't have your phone, and I was just taking it out on her, and then everything happened, and then I just went to bed and got up the next morning. My mom calls like, where's Aaron? And my wife's like, what are you talking about? She goes, turn on the TV. And that was when the plane hit. And when the first plane hit, it vaporized the entire patio where we would have been sitting at that time. And so for me, it was like, okay, that's kind of a wake-up call. And so I kind of like realized how lucky I was. Not just me, but 8 other people, because I texted them and said, I'm not going to make it. So they didn't show up either. And so life happens and life comes. And I've been extremely blessed. I will tell you, I'm literally the luckiest man you'll ever meet in your life, and I know that, and I owe it to God, and I know that every single day. And then another one was I had a lump in my throat probably 10 years later, and they kept saying it's going to be nothing, it's nothing, and it came back, and it kept getting bigger and bigger, and the doctor goes, let's do a sonogram, and he goes, oh, that thing's getting big. So they came in and did a biopsy, and I'll give you some advice. If you do a biopsy and the doctor calls you later and says, we need another biopsy, it's normally not good. So I'm like, okay. And so I went in the next day, and he calls me back later that night, and it was a Wednesday, and he says, we're going to take it out on Friday, but we have a very strong belief. We think it's lymphoma, so you're going to have to fight this out. And so I went in, and I came out, and it was benign. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I get it. I got to do something more important. There's a bigger purpose in my life. And so regardless of your listeners, where they are in their spiritual journey, if they even have one, for me, it was a turning point for me. Yeah. And that's when I said, I'm going to there's got to be something else I need to do. And so I started thinking about, what do I want to do when I'm done putting my kids through college? And so this came up at the perfect time. So there's so many other things I could have done, but Haslam's where I need to be, and so it's a spiritual journey how I got here.
Well, I'd say that story will definitely be relatable. It definitely will impact people on a personal level. So aside from like your flight story, the story with the lump on your throat and how you realized you have a bigger purpose, right? Is there anything else in your life, your personal life, aside from work, that you think made a bigger change for the better that you'd like to go into?
Yeah, my family. They've been nothing but supportive. Okay. When I told them I was jumping out of the corporate world and coming to work in academia, they were all like, gosh, that's perfect. They love it. And so, I've noticed that they've even said, like, wow, they really like what I'm doing, and they can see that I get up every single day. Because I don't have a 9-to-5 job here at Haslam. And students who are seeing this who've called me on a Sunday know. They text me on Sundays, and know there's certain hours I can't do it, but I literally am talking to students at 8 o'clock at night. I'm talking to students on Saturdays. I'm talking to students. My busiest time, Christmas break. Yeah. Because all the students go home, and the seniors especially, the parents are like, so where's this job? And then they get all stressed and they call me. So, there really is no 9-to-5 in this role, but that's okay because I'm used to that in the corporate world. So for me, it's a good role for me to be in and to work with the students, because I get the phone calls from students that are the best calls. I just got an offer. I get students that are questionable calls, like, hey, I got an offer, but I want to counter, or I'm thinking of this, or how do I parlay this, or there's this other job. And sometimes I get the phone call where they didn't get the job. And sometimes I just have to help dust them off and say, it's okay, I applied to 4 jobs at American Express and didn't get it. So sometimes you just have to be the coach, and sometimes you have to be the mentor, and sometimes you just have to be the dad and come over the top and say, that is not good behavior.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I think I might have been one of those students that texted you on a weekend. But aside from that,
did I get back to you?
You did get back to me.
There you go.
You did get back to me. What was the biggest setback? Now, aside from the positive, what was the biggest setback in your personal life that you really think halted your growth, I'd say?
That's a great question. I think what halted my growth, I'm going to take this in a different way, wasn't my professional growth. I think that's what most people are going to think, what you mean by that? But I'm going to flip it and say I think chasing up the corporate ladder halted my spiritual growth. Because it kind of pulled me away from God a little bit, or I allowed it to. It didn't pull me away. I did it myself. I pulled myself away. And to me, that wasn't the right decision. And so I started kind of skipping church and doing things like that. And so I started chasing the career a little too much. So I did it to myself. And what I found was I was not really necessarily in perfect balance.
Got it. How'd you overcome?
You're going to regret that when you get older.
I'm used to it.
Trust me. Take it from a guy that's
Okay, I'll listen.
Okay.
How did you overcome the obstacle you just talked about?
I think God overcame it for me. Put a tumor in my neck. What else do you want me to say? No, I'm serious. I honestly think it was a sign where it's okay, I'm gonna humble you a little bit.
But then it made you realize.
And it was the best gift I ever got. I have no regrets. The only regret I have is the surgeon was so good. He put the scar right where he said a wrinkle would be, and sure enough, a wrinkle took out the scar.
That's
I'm like, I really wanted a scar in my neck. It's a great story.
It really all worked out eventually. Yeah. So just honestly a broad question, and I kind of want to know this too. How do you manage your work-life balance, and has it changed since you were 20 years old, since you were in my shoes?
My work-life balance hasn't stopped since I was, when I was 20, I was the pomp king of the University of Tennessee. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother episode. But
I can't be that.
Yeah, I outsold the bookstore and sold pomps to every fraternity and sorority on campus, and that was a whole business for itself for 3 years. But I will tell you that I think my biggest success has probably been my personal life with my family. My wife understands it. She gets it. I cannot tell you how many times we're driving down the road and I get a call from a student and she's on speakerphone and I just say, hey, Eva's in the car. And she hears what I do and she hears the questions that the students will have, and I'll take them off speaker if they want it private. But she actually sees that what I help the students do matters, And she knows it makes me happy, and she also knows that it makes her happy to see me happy. So it's kind of like a perfect ecosystem. I think if I was married to anybody else, and we're celebrating our 35th anniversary here in a couple weeks, I better go get something. But no, to me, it's having the perfect ecosystem to support what you want. So my advice is when you leave college, don't just find your job, find your ecosystem of what's going to make you successful. And your ecosystem's different. Everybody's ecosystem is different.
Perfect.
So.
Well, I want to tell the viewers to wish him a happy anniversary when it comes. But honestly, I think now we can just hop into have some serious questions.
Sure.
You've answered a lot more than in depth than I expected, and this was great. Just talking about this, and this is going back to being 20, of course. What is something you now know that you wish you knew when you were 20? So my shoes right now.
Microsoft, NVIDIA, Apple. No, I think the thing I wish I would have known that I want to instill in students right now is separate the important stuff from the non-important stuff. Mm-hmm. And I will always say that a lot of times you spend a lot of calories burning on things that don't really matter.
Of course.
And if you can quickly separate, this is life-threatening, this is financially threatening, this is career-threatening, or is this just static? Just tune out the static. It's just tune it out, because it doesn't do any good for you. Mm-hmm. The best quote I was ever given by somebody was by a friend of mine named Jim Murphy. And Jim Murphy used to work at Clear Channel, and a phenomenal guy in the ticketing business, and we're still close friends. And he told me, he goes, it's just news. How you choose to react is completely up to you. And that's true. And think about that. So you get a B on a test, it's just news. What are you going to do? You're going to regroup. Yeah. You're going to fall apart. You're going to get you're going to just spiral out, or you're going to regroup and rebound. And it's like life's going to be throwing you stuff all the time. It's not always 9 to 5. It's not always easy. But how you react matters. And so, do you want to be the person that's high drama, that every time something bad happens, it's end of the world? Mm-hmm. Or can you be a person to say, okay, this is my new reality, I'm going to adapt to it and move on?
Of course. So. Well, I know you're still very young, but what's a resource? What's a resource, a book, a habit, an article that you found to be particularly useful?
L. David Marquette is he is a retired admiral from submarine admiral in the U.S. Navy, and there's several YouTube videos out there, and they're very short, like 8 minutes, and they're illustrated, so they're great, real entertaining. And I encourage you guys to post one for your viewers and listeners. It is the mentality of I intend to, that I referred to earlier in leadership, and that he was given the worst performing submarine in the fleet, and he turned them around to high performing because he empowered the people to make decisions and be accountable. So that's probably the best advice I've ever received and seen. So Jen Lure from Experian gave me that, and I love it. And every organization I go into, I make them watch it because I want them to know that's how I lead.
I'm sure everyone's going to look that up right after this.
So.
But fitting with the theme, Project Inspire podcast, what inspires you specifically? Very vague, but
it's vague. What inspires me is watching people win. I love watching first gens cross the stage and land jobs and make more money than their families ever made in a W-2 in any given year. Sometimes. I love watching students land that role that they thought was out of reach. I love watching students land that career that they want, but I also get to watch the students after they graduate because they're still in my LinkedIn network. I had a student who works at FedEx, who was my student 12 years ago, reach out to me, and we were just getting caught up. I have another student right now who was one of my closest, she was one of my handlers when I was my second year here. Her job was to handle me on campus. Good luck with that. And she now is going through she's going through a cancer battle. And so I was one of the first people she called when she started the journey, and now she's coming through the journey, and I'm incorporating. That inspires me. Yeah. So really watching people win and helping people get where they want to go because other people help me get where I want to go. Yeah. So that to me is my fuel.
Well, these deep-rooted connections and helping people go from wherever they are now to the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I love it. I love watching them when they get successful, and and just seeing them land a job that they didn't think they were going to get, or getting them prepared for a job. So.
All right. Well, honestly, we can just hop onto the last and final question. You get to think about this really much, and I know this has been a fantastic interview for you so far. But what's next, Aaron Snyder?
Lunch. I don't. Honestly, I don't think that far out. I just don't. I stopped doing that.
Understood.
And what it is whatever God's going to show me, it'll reveal itself. And so for right now, I was telling the dean, I said, I could be the guy who's 100 years old, coming to work one day and boop, it's over. I mean, I don't know. But I do know is whatever is next, I will trust it and open follow. But it will be something that I'm going to be asked to do. But I don't know exactly what that is. I'm not gunning for anything. But whatever I'm asked to do, I accept it and I want to do it because it's for the greater good of the university. So I really don't have an honest answer.
I mean, it makes sense. You're living in the present.
Yeah, well, I'm living in the present, but I'm also getting to live through other people. So for me, it's fantastic. If they came to me and said, we need help over here, then I'll help over there. If they need help over here, I'll help over there. And by not having a plan, it always works out best. I never, ever in a million years had on my bingo card, I'd be a business coach over at Tickle running a senior design class. I'm working on a Lockheed project right now, Lockheed Martin projects, right? And so I never had that. So if you put limits on yourself of timelines or this is what I need to hit or what I want to hit or here's exactly what's next, if you just go with the flow and be a current, you'll be surprised of all the great things that come your way.
Understood. Well, that kind of wraps it up, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here, answering all my questions greatly and in depth and whatnot. I hope this has been an enjoyable experience for you.
It was great. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, that wraps up our episode of Project Inspire. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Project Inspire. We're available on all streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check out our other episodes while you're here, and stay tuned for the next one. As always, go Vols.